1484, 2026 World Cup, the controversy over the KFA cartel, 1 of 4. Question. Looking at the various controversies surrounding the Korea Football Association through the 2026 World Cup, I feel that structural contradictions, like the cartel zombies you mentioned, Master, are revealing themselves across society. As we reach the peak of this turning point, I ask for your teachings on what natural principles and processes will dismantle these outdated vested interest structures and operational methods, and how the order and operational systems of a new era will be established. Additionally, I ask for your deep teachings on the right central axis for cultural education to cultivate true operators who can revive the era rather than having the young generation of today create yet another vested interest or cartel. Right now, the world is in chaos. The world. This is causing trouble that has a problem, and there is not a single thing in the world that does not have a problem. Why? Up until now, humanity has taken what it has done and said, this is right, that is right, and has tried everything. Having tried it, where are we now? We started with the logic of those things, labeled them as world peace, and did it all. But now we are at the very end. What does being at the very end imply? We did things saying, this is how you run a government, but even that is at its end. Then, religions grew rapidly while claiming, this is what religion is, but this is also at its final stage. For corporations, it was said that if you do things this way, it works out like that. But this too is now at its end. There is absolutely nothing in the world that is not at its end. We in South Korea have also set up households and lived this way. And having lived through an era, we are now at the very end. The very end. Why? What is that final stage? We thought we would be incredibly happy living as a family. But reaching the end, there is nothing but side effects. We thought we would see glory if we raised our children. Believing the children would do well, we invested everything in that hope. But reaching the end, only side effects are occurring. Find me just one thing in society that does not produce side effects. There is none. What this means is that in the end, everything that was wrong with that logic comes to light. There is nothing South Korea hasn't laid its hands on. Regarding the World Cup that you asked me about today, South Korea deeply joined in, kicking the ball hard sometimes and softly at others. But reaching the end, even this is driven by an organizational cartel, and our sportsmanship, which started for the sake of human peace, has vanished entirely. The Olympics are the same, everything is the same. Even culture started with a culture that dreamed of the future. But reaching the end, it's 100% side effects. Side effects happen in everything, so side effects have come because things went wrong. Then how are we going to handle this? Since things went wrong, side effects came. That means everything must be torn down and fixed. They even made a song, didn't they? Change, change, change everything. They already made a tremendous song back then. They told us to change it from that time on, but people wouldn't change. It was suggested to turn back if it didn't work out as we went along, but people didn't change, didn't turn back, and just kept going. And that is how we arrived at this state today. Where did change start? It started in South Korea. While running corporations, the second chairman of Samsung, Lee Kun-hee, said, change, change, and by the third time he said it, he said to change everything except your wife. He should have changed his wife back then, too. If he had changed her back then, side effects as big as the ones today wouldn't have come out. So, because it feels suffocating, they say to change, but because they don't know how to change, they can't present a solution and thus cannot change it right now. That's why we have come to the very end. The very end. Now, from this point, let's sort things out. The representative of humanity is South Korea. How did South Korea grow? Because doing things alone doesn't work, it began to create organizations. Organizations. They raised the government and made an organization for the government, made organizations for society, made organizations for corporations, made organizations for religion. There is nowhere they didn't make an organization. Even in society, whenever they did something, they made association organizations, all sorts of organizations. But when the organizations were first made, people shouted, cheer up, let's unite, and got together. Who made that organization for them? whether small or large, this power was made by the power of the citizens. By the power of the citizens. All organizations were made because it was a society that created organizations. But without knowing what an organization is supposed to do, now that our organization has grown a bit, people start getting greedy here. When it was small, they only kept the organization alive. Later, when the organization grows a bit, everyone starts getting greedy within the organization. Then let's divide it broadly. Who made the government organization for them? It was made by the power of the citizens. You must grasp this fact well. Then who made the corporations grow this much? This is the power of the citizens. Then who made religion? Then how were intellectuals created? Intellectuals were made by the power of the citizens. Those corporate businesses were made, and every organization would have been impossible without the power of the citizens. The country was also made into a large organization by combining all the power of our citizens, and the underlying strength of our citizens was just that good. South Korea is a society where nothing would have worked if the citizens had not helped with their power. Every structure in South Korea is made up of organizational structures. They made the national organization this big, so within this national organization, they make organizations, and within those organizations, they make more organizations. And now those organizations are fighting each other, just so they themselves can do well. That is what is referred to as a cartel. An organizational cartel has arisen. Then, religion also made its own organization. Its own organization, but within that, they make another organization. Organizations appear within corporations too. So this organization, that organization, and inside them again. In the end, these organizations made by the power of the citizens, as they grew large, they stopped doing their own work, and everyone started fighting out of greed. So this is bound to completely ruin us if left as it is. The country itself is in danger right now. The country itself. Now, they made an organization called the National Assembly. And what does the National Assembly do? It is an organization made to do politics. But in that organization, they do not do politics. And instead, everyone is engaged in an organizational fight now. They fight to grab more power for their organization. South Korea is a place that ruins itself if it fights. Joseon must not fight, but they are fighting right now. Organizational cartels. The very first thing that must disappear is political party organizations. I'm sorry to state the answer first, but the very first thing that must disappear in South Korea is the political party organization. Nourishing parties in humanity is what is ruining the world right now. We must eliminate party organizations first. All parties must disappear. I don't know how many arrows will fly at me again for this. Parties must be completely wiped out. If this is what a party is, all parties must be eliminated now. But now, every single one of these organizations must be eliminated one by one. If this is currently religion, religious organizations must be eliminated. They must be eliminated 100%. Why? If religious activities are conducted righteously, this organization must exist. But there is not a single religious activity being conducted righteously. Where? In South Korea. Also where? In humanity. Righteous activities from religious organizations have not come forth. Then, righteous work from government organizations has not come forth either. At the final stage, when righteousness should have emerged and gathered strength, righteous activities should have been performed, but they did not come forth. Righteous activities from corporate organizations did not come forth either. Then people ought to ask how to act righteously, but there is nowhere to ask. What do you think will happen to this country now? What do you think will happen to humanity? Now we fall into chaos. To survive, organizations exploit the citizens of humanity. To survive, organizations exploit the citizens of the country. To survive, organizations are now exploiting the many people of the country. Why? Because they couldn't find the right path, and the organization must not collapse. They must now extract from the pockets of the citizens to keep going. Why? When it was small, it was fine. Even if they took a little from our pockets, we could just work hard, but the organizations grew too big. In that largeness, toward the citizens, they are like vampires. Or should I use another word, zombies. Every organization is a zombie. Zombies that scour and eat up our pockets. Zombies that suck out all our energy. Then what happens to the citizens? If the citizens have suffered until now and raised you all with the power of the citizens, you should perform a blood transfusion, an energy transfusion, to refill those thin, withered pockets. But there is not a single place that does this, and instead, everyone is telling us to hand over what little is left. And because the country and humanity cannot find their own work to do, things are turning out like this. Because of this, this will eventually be driven by the logic of power until World War III breaks out. If World War III breaks out, the damage will not be minor. It will bring immense damage. Now, whether World War III is prevented or allowed to happen depends on us. If we find a new right answer, order will return anew. If we cannot find the answer, World War III will break out. And when this World War III breaks out, what will happen along with it is that the Earth's tectonic plates will shake together. We are facing a tremendous era right now. The breakout of World Wars I and II happened as an era for cleanup. Cleanup. That's why the tectonic plates didn't shake. To clean up. But what were they cleaning up? Since we finished all our evolution, let's clean up anew and face the growth period. That cleanup is what World Wars I and II were. And so, in humanity, on the global village, 30% of the people, originally that's called evolution. Since it evolved 30%, they left a population of 3 billion behind and left 30 million compatriots here in South Korea and wiped out the rest. To start anew, we should have studied the history that occurred in modern times righteously. We didn't do this study. Everyone was too busy filling their own pockets. But this is an era where you get scolded if you don't live righteously. Because we couldn't live righteously and got scolded, where we went looking was temples and churches. Because we got scolded, because it was difficult, because it became hard for me to live, we went to churches and temples. We went to churches and temples because we became patients. But instead of doing their own work there, they dragged people along saying, believe in God. Believe. And it became a religion of let's believe. The let's believe religion. We evangelized to believe in Jesus, didn't we? Let's believe. Let's believe in Jesus, let's believe in God, let's believe in Buddha, let's believe in whoever. They did a let's believe religion. That is South Korea. That's why South Koreans listen exceptionally well. How? They still believe. Still. When they first said, let's believe in the way, since Buddha wasn't originally there, they carved a rock over there, called it Buddha, and left it as a temporary means, expedient. But now they believe in the rock, the rock. They said, let's believe in God and Jesus, and since God has no physical form, he cannot be drawn. Therefore, instead of God, they brought out Jesus and put up the cross he hung and died on. They brought this as a temporary means, but later on, they believe in that cross. What kind of day is today? South Korea is the nation equipped with the highest knowledge and the smartest people in humanity. This nation is still all believing. They listen so well that they just believe. And what happened because they believed? It becomes a day like today. No. What kind of country is South Korea? If you don't know this kind of thing, the question just keeps being the same question over and over.